machine with a need to bleed you when the light goes green. Best believe I'm in the zone to be. From a yin to my yang to Z. Put a grin on my chin when you come to me. Cause I'll win, I'm a one of a kind, and I'll bring death to the place you're about to be. Another river of blood running under my feet. Forged in a fire lit long ago. Stand next to me, you'll never stand alone. I'm last to leave, but the first to go. Lord, make me dead before you make me whole. I feed on the fear of the devil inside of the enemy faces in my sight. Aim with a hand, shoot with a mind, kill with a heart like Arctic ice.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a soldier and I'm marching on.
I am a warrior, this is my song.
I am a warrior and this is my song. I bask in the glow of the rising war. Lay waste to the ground of an enemy shore. Wade through the blood spilled on the floor. And if another one stands, I'll kill some more. Bullet in the breach and a fire in me. Like a cigarette thrown to gasoline. If death don't bring you fear, I swear you'll fear these marching feet. Come to the nightmare, come to me. Deep down in the dark where the devil be. In the mall where the jaws and the razor teeth. Where the brimstone burns and the angel weeps. Crawl to the gods ever cross your path. And my silhouette hangs like a body bag. Hope is a moment now long past. The shadow of death.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Stu and the Nunn. Here we are, July 7th. We are past the 4th, and we're off and running. I am by myself tonight. Toby is not here, but I am joined by a very special guest who I think you're going to love. This is his first, but it will not be his last time on the show. I can guarantee you that. So I want to welcome to the Stu and the Nunn show, Mr. Paul Koch from the Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. We'll just say that. How you doing, Paul? How you doing tonight?
I am doing great. We're on the back end of some victory, if you will, for standing up for freedom, but more so standing up for community empowerment. Both sides of the spectrum. We really got a lot of people involved. I kind of got pulled in last minute, did a bit of a Hail Mary, and we were sort of caught in the gears of a runaway process that everyone says, well, you had your chance. And at the end of the day, it was really more about how when people finally found out what was happening to them, it was almost if you were at the electrician was there to cut off your electric on your house without due process or notification. And so there was a lot of scrambling to try to, as a community, say, hey, hold tight. But
So hold on, I'll pause you right there.
Yeah.
That's your teaser, everyone. But first, we're going to talk about who Paul is. But just to give you a little bit of idea, when you talk about community empowerment and that kind of stuff, we've talked about that a lot of times on the show, right? It does not start with the national election. It does not start with the every 4-year presidential election that all the press covers. It starts at your local community, whether it's your assembly or a student school board or whatever it is, and it works its way up there. So we're definitely going to get into that. But so there's your good teaser. That was like our commercial. Paul,
Awesome.
tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself, if you could. They kind of know who you are, and then we're going to get into really dive into what you were just.
So I'm a model from New York City.
I see
no,
that.
Kidding.
Are you a hand model from New York City?
Actually, Chris would tell you that I'm a beard model. He
Yeah.
says my beard actually has its own gravity. I just cut this beard about 2 weeks. Anyway, that's sort of the thing. That's about as modelly as I get, as maybe beard wax or mustache. But I'm still looking for that sponsor for the Motley Patriot. But I'll never wear it, my wife. But anyway, about me. I'm an Air Force brat. My father was the son of a gentleman up in Massachusetts who was a J.C. Penney's manager guy back in my dad was born in the early 30s. But anyway, Dad joined the Air Force, went down to boot camp back when the Air Force had boot camp in Miami. So you can imagine a 20-year-old in Miami and what have you.
Yeah, it was. You just want to go to Air Force just to go to basic.
Yeah, exactly. I can't help but wonder they didn't have that in mind when he joined. But, My dad, his uncle was my dad's brother was a tank commander in Korea, big war hero on that. There's a whole lineage in my family of sort of the Forrest Gump thing all the way back up the food chain. I even go back to the Mayflower on my dad's mother's side, back on Horn, Katie and Brainerd. But my mom is English. My dad met my mom in London. He saw the light shine on her in Piccadilly Circle or Circus, I think they call it. I always get that wrong. And he saw her, and then he ran up to her and said, "Can I have dinner with you?" And that's my mom, Elizabeth. And she was an actress at the time. And you know what? She turned down a very nice role to marry my dad and bring me into the world. So, the mom.
Yeah.
But military brat stationed in Milton Hall, England, Las Vegas, Nevada, Sumter, South Carolina, Topeka, Kansas. Kind of and then settled here in Northern Virginia, where my uncle lived. Was working at Department of Commerce after he retired from. So we kind of set up here, and I thought as soon as I became 18, I would leave, and then realized that DC is a happening.
That's where you stayed.
I did.
Yeah.
I bloomed where I was planted, as my dad would say, and it's been exciting. I love the diversity of folks out here. I find that I'm in the entertainment business, so I do a lot of production work. I do a lot of events on Capitol Hill. I've met all these people that I would never have audience with. I'm a fly on the wall for some of the most amazing conversations. And what I quickly found out is that Washington, D.C. is the center of the universe. Whether you like to admit it or not, New York would disagree and other places would disagree. But this is the center of the universe here. You meet some of the most amazing people. I have a congressman friend out of Arkansas. Shout out to Rick Crawford. These people are here for the right reason. And there are people involved in our political process that are absolutely fighting for the constituent. It's a tough battle. It's a tough battle. And I guess you have to sort of navigate the halls of power. I can only imagine how tough his gig is. But very nice gentleman. And I've just met so many people, and just sort of parlayed that awareness to eventually starting to realize that I had an opinion. And I would start pressing that opinion on social media a little bit. And then the whole kind of social media wars began. I mean, I had a MySpace back in the day so I could keep track of my kids. So I've kind of been dancing social media.
Yeah.
But anymore, social
was
media.
Was it a MySpace with music playing and like it was real long and you had animated
I
icons and
had
stuff?
all of it. I was the HTML king in my own mind back then.
That's
But I was learning to skateboard with my stepson so that I could keep him safe. I've got the broken bones to show for it. But I had a really cool skateboard. I'm hanging out with the kids because involvement. And I guess I went from being a parent of brilliant children. Sometimes I think they'd have been easier if they were dumb. There's that. But yes, my parenting skill had to find an outlet. And it seems like I want to be America's dad. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm just trying to help and trying to be part of constructive. And I think that's what we all need to do. I think that, what can I do? What can I do? Well, you can do a lot. It begins with little steps. And this is a big thing now that a lot of the people that have reached back to me from what I've done, I saw your Facebook post. I see this, I see that. We're all influenced. I think that's the big thing about social media is that you can become an influence. And one of the guys I produced, Will Gravitt, he played on the campaign trail with George Bush. We got nominated Best Country Band, Best Country Album at the DC Whammies a couple of years back, just before COVID. And that gets me in the room with a lot of the sort of the really kind of centered in Montana, Texas,
right?
All those folks that tend to have kind of a good grounded political ideology. I wouldn't call them far right. They tend to be kind of center right a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I think that's extreme right wing now. I don't know. It's all kind of crazy.
It all depends on, it's a perception. I guess the eye of the beholder. It all depends on who's thinking about it, what they consider it right. I mean, we went from, extreme right being close to, what we would consider, almost neo-Nazis to now you just have to wear a red hat and just, believe one way or another. And then your entire perception of that person is skewed to, they must be this, they must be that. Right. The whole concept of, someone that votes either way depending on the issue, someone that's independent. It's almost like the left has, and it really is the left has eroded the independent down the middle. There's no such thing. They either expect you to
Sure.
be one way or the other. But
Well, I would argue that an independent is someone that's just willing to do a little bit of intellectual rigor, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
talked about that earlier. My big thing, of course, in the community involvement is that you have to sort of take a step back from your own personal ideology. And I taught special needs kids for about 8 years in music. And I learned through that process that the first thing that you have to do when you're trying to improve someone else's perspective or view or teach or coach or however you want to, whatever nomenclature you want to use about helping another human, is that you have to get over yourself. And I think we have that problem on the right. A lot of people need to kind of take a moment to get over themselves so that when you engage a problem, you really kind of get yourself hunkered down on, go through this kind of step by step. And you have to have a lot of forgiveness and patience. If you take a step back and think about the level of bombardment of these ideas that on the face of them, prima facie, are great ideas. Like, I'm a fan of woke, but I'm a fan of being genuinely woke. And when I say that, I live in Orange County. Of course, we work in DC a lot, but I'm out where Orange County was the original wild, wild west back in the late 1600s. And the families around here would have been, there was a tribe around here called the Manahoecs. You go back, and the Manahoec tribe was actually the first tribe that gave shelter to free blacks that were escaping. And that's why I say, if you go woke, a lot of the families here are mixed that would be indigenous American. So I say that not to get distracted, but to say that there are always mitigating circumstances that drives how people behave. But if you take a step back and try to be a little more Buddha about the thing, you may find that there's more that unites you than divides you if you're willing to take time. And that's not easy. That takes work. You can't do that in a coffee shop standing in line for your latte at Starbucks. You're going to have to find creative ways to reach out because we're all Americans. And
you just have to have ways to sit down and talk with civility, right? That's the whole civil discourse.
Sometimes it doesn't start that way.
Right.
Sometimes it doesn't start that way. Somebody that's indignant, if they're indignant, my dad always said, if somebody hates you, they're probably easier to date than somebody that has no feeling for you at all. This was one of his fatherly advices about dating girls. If they have any feeling for you at all, you've got an in. So I would argue that, and I agree with what you say about civility, but on this very project that I was involved in, I got pulled in at the last minute, and I had the good fortune of knowing some of the community leaders, but I also had been down in the trenches scrapping enough to know kind of the people that were really trying to shut down any sort of dissension, trying to cancel. Basically, they had taken all the notes from cancel culture to try to shove this new art through the community. And they're like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just fake news, this whole thing. But
so real quick before we get too much, can you give our people watching and listening a little bit of a background of the situation? Just like align them to what area in Virginia we're talking about, the community, and kind of some of the historical, and because then I think you're going to just run with it about how you got involved.
So there's an organization in town, the Orange Arts Center, and my daughter's 27. She actually went through some of their programs when she was 4 and 5, painting. And the charter of the Art Center, from where we experienced it as citizens, I never read the charter, so I'm kind of speculating here, but it seemed as though, going back to the original Challenge America NEA grant framework, which you can look that up, it was really more about bringing art to underserved communities. And they do all these amazing things. Somewhere along the line, the mandate changed from kind of engaging underserved communities. Somebody decided it's time to put all this new modern art. Again, I haven't read it, so I can't really make a hard representation. But the general word on the street is that it's really now more about trying to emulate what happened in Strasbourg. And tell your listeners, all they have to do is go look at the Strasbourg mural program and see what they did to Strasbourg. And essentially, they kind of through guidance through NEA, and if you go to the NEA website, and I can give some links to you, that shows basically how federal funds that were originally used to reach out to underserved communities are now sort of imposing urban graffiti stylized art, and they'll say it's not graffiti, but then you go to the website of the artist they hired, and they're called graffiti artists. So there's a lot of this kind of denial that they're kind of stealthy about how they do this, and I get it. I actually like some of the artwork because I come from an artsy fartsy family. I was in theater in my 20s. I was a sound designer. I get all that, but the problem is that it feels as though they're trying to cancel any positive framework of our culture through art. And if you go back to history of socialist realism, what they did, the Nazis did it, the Russians did it. You kind of create this warm, fuzzy, iconic zeitgeist of art, if you will. It kind of puts a warm and fuzzy around what sometimes are very specific goals and objectives to make voters. Can I prove that? No. Is it historically accurate to frame it like that? Very much so.
Okay. So, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
So, you like you talked about, you have this background with art. It's something that is near and dear. I mean, it's not like you're coming from the outside, from the Wild West, and going, that's all for wussies.
That stuff, that stuff ain't good enough for us. And that's kind of how they framed it. They're kind of calling us, and I actually saw comments. Well, get ready for it, boomers, because it's coming. And the thing is, there's a
boomers is a bad word, right? They try to make that sound like
it's a pejorative. It's a pejorative. It's used as a pejorative. But there was an article on Slate, because I do a lot of research. I put time into. That's a beautiful thing about the interwebs, is that if you're willing to do a little bit of rigorous research, you can find where they bury themselves when they kind of do their teamwork on how they're going to go after us, and you see it. And there was an article written about how the framework, and I posted this. Gal was writing an op-ed style piece about how, elitist art, you don't want to do that. Da 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 da. But then she flips around and says, "But to be honest, hey, I think that's the wrong argument. I think we should be able to bring this art into these communities." So the spirit of what NEA kind of framed this in under Clinton seems to be missing from, and they canned Lee Greenwood. The Biden administration canned Lee Greenwood from the from part of the staff of the NEA, from what I understand. I'll have to check me on that. I think he was pulled off of one of the advisory boards.
I heard something about that. Yeah.
So check me. I'll be wrong on facts, but right on. I'm kind of a hand grenade thinker, so I'm not a sniper guy. But the stuff is there, but you can do the research, and there is definitely, if you go for art, there's always controversy, and they do a lot of good things. But I think it's a fair assumption to suggest there's not many guys like you and me on the NEA board. I think that's a fair assumption.
Yeah, I think so. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about this what they were doing and the kind of art they were bringing in, and why you felt so compelled to. You kind of say got pulled into this fight. But you took it. You grabbed the guidon and took point on it, right? So
I absolutely did. But there's no doubt that I showed up late to the party, and there were early heroes that stood up against it, and under the ire of the intellectually savvy members of the community. And here's basically a simple kind of unpacking. I got to say unpacked. Awesome. Where they began with a process to pick art, but not to help the community to pick the artist. That was done by a small group of people. And excuse me, little burpee. But by the time the community found out of what was happening, you had your chance. You had your chance. Well, what happened is that they went through the process on their website of looking for artists. And of course, that they hired an NEA, sweetheart artist to do it, or more specifically, an NPR widely regarded artist. So he calls himself a graffiti artist, urban graffiti artist. That's what he calls himself. That's what they call him. So, but they hire this guy. And then when he comes with his concept of art, which I actually think the artist was very unfairly treated in this, And I'll get into that a little bit more, but I felt like the artist was kind of put between a rock and a hard place by the organization. Um, I'll get to that. But by the time the community started to find out what was happening, they started mobilizing on Facebook and media. And then immediately there was this super concerted effort to belittle, condemn, and be kind of nasty to the people and really trying to cancel. And that's kind of when I sort of came in into that process a lot. Um, I, I, I don't really go looking for trouble, but I don't mind standing up to bullies. And that's kind of what felt like that this gal, who happens to be a Russian immigrant, I mean, from, I think she came here when she was 9 or something, but she's an artist, nice lady. I won't mention names because I sort of throw more shade on any of these folks to either side. But she was the one that stood up, and I had gotten in contact with her. She had talked to me. I says, look, if you've got people mistreating you, videotape what's going on. We can always put it out on social media because there's nothing like that piece of evidence. And that's how it's done nowadays. Because basically, videos on YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff, that's their tool. And you've seen the whole BLM marches and all that. It's all about that content, and then finding the moment that sort of frames it in their favor, and sort of exposing that. And if the behavior on face value without manipulating is bad, it's bad for them, and they can't take it down because of, oh, well, you're manipulating. No, this is what this person said. This is what they did. So we're kind of reflecting back on them what a lot of times, and I hate to say to them, but the method is to sort of put sunlight on it.
Right.
And
right.
once we did that, once we got sunlight, the conversation got a little even more heated because they were starting to feel the pressure. And so I started reaching out to members of the community that I knew from having dealt business. And hey, what do you know about this? And everybody's like, yeah, we don't really want to get involved in that. That's just, there's no good out on this. I'm not going to sort of weigh in. And that's the last thing I want to hear. So I started doing videos. I had done the Johnny Depp trial, and we'll talk about that at another show, but I was involved in that just really because I had seen how the media was doing pieces. My wife had been going to the trial and seeing what was happening. Then I started watching all the LawTube folks, and I was watching the trial. I was seeing what was happening. I was exercising intellectual rigor. You'll see that theme come up a lot. And you start to watch, don't believe your lying eyes. You start watching this stuff, and then all of a sudden you go to the news and you go, well, that's not at all what's happening.
Right.
And so there's this huge disconnect between what folks on the street that don't have time to do that are consuming. You sit down, you worked hard all day, you sit down at the couch, and they're like, Johnny Depp is terrible. And you go, okay, well, time out. This is kind of the thing that is thematic to all these problems that I find in our country, is that it's so hard to find the truth. And there's not a lot in place that tells truth. So it's up to us individually to do that, but not getting too distracted. So, which I will do a lot, and I apologize to your listeners. I'm a little bit Danny DeVito. Cows.
Squirrel.
Yeah, I'm that guy for sure. But I don't forget what else I was hunting. So once once the bullying of her became real, I put together some YouTube videos with some clips. And I put a YouTube video up, said Karen calls the authorities. You guys will have to check that out. It was really bad optics, Arts Center leadership, because they really said, you're not part of this process. This is not your event. In fact, there's a this is not your event video. And so we put those shorts up, and it just showed that they really were tone deaf, because we've decided what needs to be done and so on and so forth. Now, a little more background. So within their mind, one could assume that they really are holding up this Strasbourg mural program in high regard. This is our gold standard, if you will, of what we want to do to Orange. Well, Orange is the father of two presidents. Orange is where the Constitution of America was written, and they wanted to take a nice mural in the park that was called Taylor Park. It wasn't dedicated to Zachary Taylor. It wasn't dedicated to James Madison. It was actually dedicated to their grandparents. So it goes back even further than this. So, and a lot of people don't really understand the root of America. Its taproot is in Orange. The more you dig, everybody, Jamestown, this and that and the other. But this was the first wild, wild west. And without getting into a history lesson, those are on my YouTube too, Molly Patriot. That was that gratuitous plug. That's the last time.
No, that's okay. I was going to ask. I want to point people to that. So we were going to talk about that for sure.
But once it got down to brass tacks that they were going to paint over a mural in town, that was actually done by a local artist, I think in 1999. And what they were going to do is to have this, and again, no bones on the artist. I mean, he's a first generation from, I think, El Salvador. Not sure. Have to check his website on that. But Central American, we'll go with that. Who's done well for himself, which is exciting, and he's a great artist. But he's a graffiti artist. I don't see, and no one in the community saw how anything that he painted would be appropriate for that park, because it's right on the main side of the wall. And they had gone to the bank and kind of said to the bank, hey, every community loves this. It's all great. And the bank got kind of dragged into this as well. So what they're doing with this whole art thing is they're partnering with NEA and then finding sympathetic business owners in town. And then they're painting the town with all this graffiti. And they'll say, it's not graffiti, it's art. It's graffiti. A duck by the end of the name is still a duck. But there's a place and time for that, and that's kind of the thing. But right. I think when they decided they were going to paint over Taylor Park with this, that's not coincidental.
So you would have been fine. You'd have been fine if businesses had let this graffiti artist do his stuff there and left that mural alone. It's just that
to an extent. Yeah. To an extent.
Have you seen some of the graffiti art? Is it in good taste? Is it good quality? I guess
it's subjective. It's like I liken it to. I've got a video where I'm down by the train tracks, and I liken it to graffiti on train tracks. Sometimes I'll stop and look at the graffiti on the train track because it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean that's when I think graffiti, I think of side of train cars, overpasses, water towers, whatever. That's when I think of graffiti. It's phenomenal, like lettering. How they can do that.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And there's no reason to belittle it or besmirch it, because art is art is art. I've always said, if there's one person that makes it and another person that likes it and consume it, it's art. May not be your art, may not be my art, but I'm really liberal on that sort of stuff. I use the L word. Oops. And that again, it goes back to, I think if they would have had more sensitivity to that. What's paradoxical is that the way that we stopped the mural going in Taylor Park had more to do with standing up for the artist who painted it in the first place. And so that was kind of the end to say, hey, this is inappropriate. And now hopefully what's going to happen within the community, they're going to come together, they're going to get involved, they're going to try to start raising funds to preserve and protect this art, this nice mural. Now, could they put another mural on there? I think there's a framework that could happen. I think it'd be interesting to sort of speak more specifically to what is appropriate for where the Constitution of America was written, what is appropriate where two presidents were, what is appropriate for the first wild, wild west, what is appropriate to the original First Nations, Anahoex, which spoke a different language from all the other Powhatans and all those. That's why I say I'm a guy that believes in woke. Just go all the way with the woke. Don't stop and sort of cafeteria line this stuff. Tell the story. Senator Jim Webb wrote a book called Born Fighting. I believe that book should be mandatory reading for every middle school history, because what he does, and he's a senator, Democrat senator from Virginia Beach. There's if you look up the whole Ulster Scots Irish stuff that he has on PBS and History Channel and all that stuff. When I got his book by accident, I was reading a book on war with navies at war. My friend from Navy friend from DIA had said, I asked him, I really want a good book on history of war and combat, and he said, well, the first one is check this one out, look it up because I'm going to mention it. Props, may I do that? Because I'm telling you, books are king, my brother. And Audible, oh my gosh! Now
are
I
you a
can be
big Audible
picking my
guy?
nose.
You just listen to them. You're a big Audible guy now.
Yeah, I could be picking my nose and yelling at the asphalt and traffic beside me and still be reading my Audible book.
Yeah.
What's not to like? But you know, I will probably share my reading list at some point in time because I will tell you that.
I know. I've heard you're a big reader in the books. You should put together a reading list. You should. Have you done book reviews on your YouTube channel, at all, or on?
I haven't, and you know, the thing is, my YouTube channel. I had a website where basically what it was called. The original website was The Motley Patriot, and maintaining a website, you're better off trying to raise 6 ill-behaved children than maintaining it. It's a lot easier. But to my library, Born Fighting by Jim Webb, The Hell of Good Intentions. Highly recommend that with Stephen Walt. That's all about the liberal hegemony driving. Well, that's another. The Pentagon Brain, World War II at Sea. That was I'm almost done with that. It's thousands of long. But when I went from that and I went to Jim Webb's book, where was I?
Yeah, no, you're right here. Yeah.
So in reading Jim Webb's book, he speaks to the arc of the Ulster Scot, Mike, which kind of picks up early 1700s ish. And we have some of the Webbs over here in Orange, which before wasn't Orange County. It was Spotsylvania County before that. Before that, it was Rappahannock County. So there's so much amazing history. I was in Surrey, sidebar, this weekend doing a show, their 4th of July show. And I am going to come back with you on this, but they had more free blacks in Surrey all through the whole history of the United States. And it flies in absolute contrast to 19. And I'm sure, you know, there's valid aspects of that story. You know, you got to kind of try to weigh the pros and the cons of any sort of book. But I'm not going to beat it up. I'm not going to put that target on my back. But I also know that they're cherry picking a lot of things to really just kind of push division. And people are quick to divide. And that's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, we were. That's what sells.
Yeah, and that's kind of what was percolating up here. So, why did I get involved? Because I went all in. I'm the guy. I'm the scrapper, and I basically weaponized my social media. I use the truth and I use facts. I contact and call
to defend somebody getting bullied. I mean,
yeah, that's bullshit, and and the optics on that are bad. It makes us look bad as humans. It makes us look bad as individuals. It makes us look bad as a county, a state, a country. You know, I'm at this point in my life where I don't have to protect my kids. I think I've found another outlet for that super father gene, which is to protect my fellow citizens. That's what's funny. They say at 61, you're too old to go to combat. I can whoop most guys in work that are 20. You know, I still climb scaffolding. I still fly stuff, all that. Right. But my ancestors lived to 104 that stayed on the farm, and the one business died in their 60s.
Good point. Good point. So let's talk about this. You know, we started the show talking about getting involved locally. You ever dipped your toe into local political or thought about it anyway?
Well, yeah, it itches at my mind, and but I kind of go back. I'm gonna broach a topic. I'm gonna broach the Trump topic. Trigger warning, everybody. I'm gonna say Trump a couple times. I was the first guy in a circle of highly influential in Washington, and I said Trump's gonna win. That's it. End of story. And they're like, oh no. And I have a friend who's a huge lobbyist who introduces me as the first guy that told him Trump had this. And he's way up the food. Not going to mention names. Way up the food chain. But to your question, I think Trump has more power as a kingmaker than in the hot seat of the
I agree with
presidency.
you there. I agree with you there.
He's a target. And to his defense, Trump punches back harder than he gets punched. That's his thing, and that's why. Oh, you broke the rules. I kind of embrace that in this incident here in Orange, where you give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but when it's time to go cage match, it's time to go cage match. And you just have to go all in. It's fortunate that the timing that I got pulled into this was a perfect time for a cage match. If I would have been that guy earlier on, I would have just been noise and discarded as a kook. So I think timing is a big thing.
But do you think this is motivating you to look at being political? I mean, running for an office, local office, something, council, assembly.
Well, so yeah, that's the quickest way to clip somebody. Put him like I did. I reached out. So okay, I'm going to throw some people under the bus. Hold on. Nick Fritas. They did not respond to me. They did not respond to my emails. I voted for him. I was a delegate. I dealt with a lot of the folks in the Republican Party in town. Nobody stood up. They're all good people, but nobody could put their credentials on. So it's almost as if the only way that you can work in this country is as a Minuteman militia that bounces around and fights skirmishes, because otherwise you're going to have to fall in line and follow marching orders. And there's too many overarching power bases that are sort of dictating the conversation. So, was I going to run for anything? I'd run for president before I ran for anything.
Well, it sounds like it's if I'm interpreting it right, you have more influence and ability to make change by not being in office, by using your voice in venues than you do being in office, like you said, kind of hamstrung to whatever boundaries or box they try to put you in.
So I've had events that I've done fundraising for. I did events for DIA. I'm just a guy. I'm nobody. I'm just a guy. But people say, hey, this guy can solve problems. So you get drug into it. And I'm like, oh, whatever I can do, I'm here for you. Mold me. What do you need? And what can I do? I got, I've started these campaigns in Washington, D.C., like when there was a hurricane in Houston. Everyone's hashtag Houston. And I thought to myself, I've been to Houston. We've done shows in Houston. And Houston is a nice town. They got a lot of money. They don't need donations. Maybe there's some people. But by and large, with the exception of sort of the inner city aspect, Sheila Jackson's name. I can tell you a story about Sheila, that you're actually part of this conversation. Where I thought to myself, well, I'm in Orange County. I'm about 65 miles outside of Washington, maybe 75. And if there was a hurricane that hit the hashtag Washington, D.C., out here in Orange County is where we would take the brunt of it, because we wouldn't have the fund and the infrastructure to solve problems. So I contacted one of my friends that was a big lobbyist, Cargill and some others. And he's a very gentleman, longstanding family. And I said, look, do you know anybody in Texas that might have some sort of influence as a charity to help underserved folks out in sort of rural Houston instead of Houston proper? And he goes, oh, I come from that community. And he says, you need to reach out and talk to. Now, here's a name I'll mention. Robin Cadle from the Golden Crescent Food Bank in their name of the town, but just outside of Houston. And so we put together an event. I'm just a guy, again, but I reached out to my friends. I talked to the band that I produce. I said, hey, can we do an event in town? And sure enough, I was able to call people and ask for help. And I not exerting any kind of political pressure, and I'm just sort of appealing to people's better angels. And I think that's the theme here. If you can find a way to appeal to people's better angels, you have to make the case for it. You have to believe in it. You got to keep, again, back to about special ed education I mentioned earlier. Get over yourself. Try to figure out what you can do to bring other people in. Give people a conduit to help. And a guy like me who just kind of rolls in can do that, because I don't owe anybody anything. I don't have to stay in my lane. And that's kind of to your original question. So I'm not, I've dealt with the local Republican groups. When I was on the campaign with Trail doing production of Glenn Youngkin, who, by the way, Glenn Youngkin people also did not return. So up yours, Glenn Youngkin's gatekeeper. And I love Glenn Youngkin. I love what he's doing. But again, nobody wants to engage these community battles, and it's misguided because this is where it matters. Right. My congressman friend said that the burn down the cities, they're taking this to rural areas. So there was in our area, 7th congressional district, was a really funny thing years back. I was at a event on Capitol Hill, and my representative was Eric Cantor, and Eric Cantor came out of the gate being a reasonably decent, kind of a conservative, not too fruity one way or the other. But then once he got into office, he was MIA. He did nothing for his constituency, and he wouldn't return calls, and he was just basically MIA, and he found himself by that behavior becoming persona non grata. Hey, I got to use it.
There you go, a PNG.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I'll go with that accurate. Your military roots are showing, brother. Quick, we got a PNG in the field. But long story short, when I talked to his staffers, I said, "You guys don't understand. They were shocked that he lost." And I said, "You know why he lost? I mean, I'm just a guy. I'm doing a show, and I end up talking to these. I guess I'm personable, or I just don't give them a place to escape to." But I said he forgot who put him in office. He didn't talk to his constituency. He lost his focus, and basically everything that he put toward the House was bills recognizing Israel, which is a fine thing. I don't begrudge that, but last time I looked, Orange County isn't in Israel. You know what I mean?
Right.
And this is the thing with a lot of these politicians. Once they get out of it's like dating. It's like going out with the high school football team quarterback and being like a good, solid B- girl, thinking he's going to call you back on Monday. That's what's going on with these politicians. And it's annoying as shit because and I cuss. It really is annoying because once they get in and they button up hatches, they're outsourcing all of their constituency services. And like
the aides and staffers and local offices.
And I know staffers. I work with staffers, and but they're not even. You can't even get to the staffers. And I think a lot of it has to do with they're inundated with so much horse shit that the conduit for communication is just real. I get it. They got to manage their time and attention, but where's the and to this point, where is the cable on the train to go stop? You're missing this. Right. This is a problem here, and there is no mechanism for that.
So let me ask you real quick. Let's pause. What are your thoughts on term limits? Do you think that would fix some of that?
I don't like the idea of term limits. I like the idea if I've got somebody in there who can do the job. That's my opinion. Like Youngkin goes in for 4 years, and then 2 years? What can a governor do? There's an argument for it, but would you really want to fire the guy driving the train because he's been driving the train for 15 minutes and now we need a new conductor? That's my state on it. I think if you got a bad conductor, gone.
Yeah, I think if it was our country from years ago where people voted for folks and they truly represented, then there were. But now that we have, like you say, people get in, they get drunk with power, they get drunk on lobbyists and whatever special interests there are, and they don't even remember where they're from except for when they have to come back and campaign. A term limit would make sure that what our founding fathers intended. People that were farmers and bankers and businessmen went to Washington, did their public service, not as a career, but as they usually gave up. They usually gave up money. They put their lives on hold to go do that.
Oh, absolutely! Like the signers of the Constitution. Some of them lost everything.
Right, and just
how many people know that?
That's what I mean. That concept of, hey, once I get one term, I've got lifetime medical benefits. I've got this and I've got that. I mean, it's they're doing it. It's not selfless service. It's selfish service. That's what it's turned into.
I'm gonna push back on that a little. I don't disagree with you that that's a part of the process, but I will also suggest that part of it has to do with the framework that they have to operate in. Like one of the things when they had, what was the Supreme Court, where a corporation is an individual,
Right,
which
right.
I thought that was horseshit.
Yeah,
I'm like, a corporate what?
yeah.
When's the last time a corporation fought for America? I mean, we can't get chips for. There's 85,000. I read an article. There's like 85,000 vehicles parked because we can't get chips that
Right.
are coming from China or what have you. That's not a citizen of America. That's not a corporation move. That's a money move. And I think if you, so here's the thing. I think if you term limit, so and I could be wrong because I am wrong, and I'm certainly willing to take the heat. But I think if you term limit, like my guy Rick Crawford, I'll say his name, First District, Arkansas. Rick doesn't take money. If you term limited Rick Crawford, you would end up losing a good, solid Christian man who's there for all the right reasons and that has enough uh, uh, enough background knowledge on how the process works. He's a pious man. He's a good Christian man. He's a great guy. He was an EOD guy in the army.
You know,
He went to Nashville.
like I've always considered 3 terms the right amount. No more than 3 terms, which gives you more than enough time to affect change. And I agree with you. There's some good ones. I think you could almost count them on 2 hands. Some really
You're
good,
probably right.
really good ones in Congress. And they
Now,
would be
Senate is different. I agree with you wholeheartedly on the Senate.
yeah. I mean,
I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I mean, I think for the if you put them on a scale, the number of ones that have forgot why they're there, that have lost their roots, that are just there sucking up for selfish reasons, compared to the handful that maybe are really doing good things. And if it means the trade-off being, well, those would also be limited to 3 terms like everyone else, but at least the 80% of the rest that are pieces of crap get thrown out after at least 6 or 12 years, whatever it is, then that's the cost of it.
So
me,
take that thought, and
Yeah.
apply that to the Senate, not the House of Representatives. And I'll tell you why. The Senate is supposed to be the gentlemanly body.
Right.
And so if I was going to break up the iceberg of political cronyism, I would do it in the Senate. I would term limit the Senate. And the reason is that the kind of corporate sort of power that's wielded in the Senate, it's that gentleman's club. It's that old
yeah. The Senate's
country
super powerful,
club.
right? That's what they call the upper house, right? That's
Yeah.
2
so-
people representing an entire population of a state.
Correct. And if you were going to change anything and be less disruptive, but let the local people have who they want, I've just seen, and I know I know that I'm a cup half full guy. I really am. I believe in people's better angels, and like I said on my Motley Patriot website, there's more that unites us than divides us. You have to embrace that. I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. If you don't go into the conversation with that perspective, you're screwed because you're not gonna make progress. I mean, it's like kind of like if we're kind of dumping pails of water out of a ship that's sinking. Even if I don't like this son of a bitch beside me, if we can find a way to get him to put some water on that pail on the side of the boat, and that's where I think our country is now. Is that at this point we need all hands on deck, and I think. And I also think on the back end of COVID and the back end of really bad fiscal policies from the Fed, you can go down the laundry list of what's wrong with how this country's been run. And most of it is from what I would call the administrative state that is not accountable to what actually happens. Focus group this stuff. They bring all these people in. They come up with all these ideas. Right now, what they're doing in the military to focus on the woke sort of inclusivity. I see pictures of people that are running certain organizations, and I scratch my head. I feel like I'm watching a Monty Python Benny Hill skit. I'm not going to name names, but it's just like the leaders that are coming in. Can you imagine if we did have, if what few normal people we had in were replaced by this vast turnover? I think it's kind of like breaking the filibuster. It might feel good now, but I think the net result would be a downside.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not disagreeing with you. It's been said a lot, but I think
You got me
I think
thinking on the Senate side. Maybe if just Senate, I still think it's cross, but I would, if I was in a
you have to
decision
come to me into some of my shows and meet some of the people that I talk to.
Yeah.
these people that I meet, these are people for the people, of the
Right.
people types, and they're out there. You're not going to hear about them because you know what? They're doing their job.
Right.
They're keeping their head down. They're navigating a really difficult political sea. Like my guy Rick, I'll mention Rick Crawford because I love that man. That guy is like he's my, what is it, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington kind of thing. But he's not a goofball. But I want to tell you a story about him. So he went to Nashville to to be a country music star, and he didn't quite get the traction he wanted, so he became I think that's a funny story, but he's a great guy. But he'll come out to our show sometime. Hasn't in a while because COVID. Everything's been, we're these are weird times where
Yeah.
fabric of society is kind of being shredded into potted meat. We were used to eating American steaks, and now it's potted meat.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's a meal, so the old thing is starting to really appreciate the old adage that the good old days are right now. Period. This is the good old day. Tomorrow is the good. Next day is a good. As you see this arc, but I will say this, sort of recap all of this. I think what's most important that we get over ourselves. We try to find common ground, hold people accountable into the fire. It's
Right.
like it takes a lot of work to do that. But also reach out to your fellow Americans, have a conversation. Yeah, you're going to have to stop talking about Trump. You're going to have to stop talking about whatever Steve Bannon said, or you need to massage these.
Well, I
But
talked
there's a
about
time
I
to
talked about
stop.
I used the word civility earlier, but that's that's the whole the foundation of the First Amendment, right? Is for civil discourse, which means we
Yeah.
sit down and have a conversation like you and I just had, whether we agree or not. And I have a lot of friends that are way on the left, and people I work with that are in the center, on the right, all over the place, and even the ones that think completely different than me. We can sit down at a bar, and we can
Yeah.
and have a drink, or sit down at dinner, even on a work trip, and just talk about, why do you think this way? Why don't you see this, without yelling, without saying you're an idiot, you're a libtard, or you're a Nazi, or whatever. And we just sit there and go, well, I just don't agree with the way you think. Have different experiences and background. To me, those are the best conversations. And it's funny when some people that maybe not ones I know as well, I've just got introduced to, that are more on the left, thinking unlike I do. I think that
They're
way.
moving to our direction.
Yeah,
that, right?
but they look at it and go, wow, I thought, they just, because they get painted this narrative that we're one that doesn't think like them is something else, and they go,
Rachel Maddow. Rachel Maddow.
and they go, look, I've had conversations. I'm a Christian. I've had conversations. I'm big into theology, and I've had
Sure.
deep conversations with Muslims and Buddhists and Jehovah's Witness and stuff. And we have the same civil conversations, and they go, wow, I didn't realize you thought, I didn't really, and it's like, good. That's the whole point of this conversation, where we're not screaming at each other or calling each other names because that's what the people on TV said to do, right? Is that we just sit there and you open up just a little bit and go, okay, we're really not that different. You go, no.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
did
you're
this.
not. We're Americans.
Right. I tell people
And-
all the
and-
time, one of the greatest images that came out of 9/11, if you could say a great image came out of 9/11, were some of the pictures from in downtown Manhattan where everyone looked the same. They were covered in the same gray ash.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm talking. You know those pictures I'm talking
Oh
about.
yeah.
You
I
couldn't
took
tell
my
if they
kids
were
there.
black, white, Latino, anything. Everyone looked the same, because at that point we are. And unfortunately, that level of patriotism that we had from about September until about early 2003 was a great time in this country, because they were just, they were waving at fire trucks, and they were walking across the street to shake a cop's hand. And they were,
Yeah.
I'm not talking in New York City, anywhere in this country. And people came together and they reached out to each other. Those were great times. But boy, it took something as bad as that to bring that out of people. It was sad.
And I think a lot of times those warm, fuzzy, feel-good moments are squandered by leadership because they go right back to the same old dog to its vomit sort of problem.
Right.
We had the economic crash in 06, 07, where basically, and I'll say this, I feel like globalism basically is outsourcing the sovereignty of our country. And I hate it, and I'm disgusted by it. And they're like, oh, well, you can get a $6 widget. Well, I can't get a $6 widget now, can I? And I think that and this is one when you mentioned about the system, I think what's broke is more to do with corporate sway. I thought about this because when I was taking a shower and cleaning up for my public appearance, which yes, this thing does get bathed on occasion. I was thinking about the arc of the political battle where the country started having a difficult time. Now, I graduated from high school in 1979, and I remember from that period, and I couldn't wait to get out and start working. I did community college, and everybody's like, I get mocked about my community college degree. I don't even have a degree. I took classes, but I took the classes I wanted, business administration, such and so forth. But I remember on the news that the whole constant beat into your head, well, we're outsourcing this because of efficiency. We're doing this because of efficiency. That was the whole thing. That was the buzzword back in the early 80s. And they would go in and they would buy a corporation. They would sell it, gut it, remove the assets, destroy the retirement programs, and then they would finance that same company widget, if you will, forward. So that basically it was like taking all the money out of that, not letting the local workers and all that benefit from it. It all went to Wall Street. It all went to hedge funds. It all went to that. But it was, when they talk about efficiency, it's my question was efficient what end? And that's what we're living out right now, is efficient to their end, to this end, not to our end. Yeah, we could get a lawnmower for $99 again and again and again and again. But if you take a class in business, one of the things of market penetration is that you buy out the competition. You first go in and you sell the product that they're selling for half of what they're selling at a loss. You shut them down. And then eventually they start to squeeze, and then you buy them out. And then you come back in with a good market price. And then you put the American consumer like the frog in the boiling water. And right now we are in a bucket of boiling water. And this is more about economic policies. We had the 6-7 crash. I bought my house on the low doc loan, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, the people didn't pay it. They didn't pay it." I'm probably 8 years left, 10 years, 12 years left, something on a 30-year note. But I paid it. I still pay it, and I got in because I was self-employed, and I would never have gotten a mortgage without a low doc. But the people that abused it were the guys that were flipping houses.
Right.
And so, but nobody talks about that. They're like, oh, these poor people, they shouldn't have gotten the low doc loan. So it's kind of weird, like how the system came. But I got off my point. What I wanted to say to you is this, to speak very specifically of why the political system broke. Back when, I'm going to go way back in time. So back when Ralph Nader went after the Corvair. Do you ever remember hearing about that?
I remember the Corvair. A buddy of mine had one. Yeah.
Yeah, they're cool. They're cool cars. I would kill if I ever hit the big time. I want a turbocharged Corvair. It's so cool. Anyway, when Nader went after large corporate because of good reasons, seat belts, the Corvair, and all that, what he did was he energized corporations to change their entire legal posture, where if they did not control the political process, they would be a victim of it. And that was the beginning of corporations no longer kind of being business, and more about. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and then more about being such a active player in the political process. Right. And so, really, at this point, it's more about familiar with the term legislative capture. So it's really, if your listeners don't understand legislative capture, look it up. It's worth understanding. I'm sure they do. You probably have really a lot smarter than me. But that's been the model of how this country has been bastardized by leadership models through legislative capture. And
it's a birth of the lobbyist, right? It's a birth of the lobbyist.
I guess it is. Again, I'm not a true historian on those things. I've just lived here and kind of smelled it and watched it fly on the wall forever. But if you don't capture it, then you can't control it. It was basically you either control it or it controls to. And so I think that that's kind of what's been a runaway process. But you add on to that, where the people that are the winners see this, that talked about all the time, and I have friends that have made a lot of money on Wall Street that do a lot of donations. They're very good human beings. There's a lot of good people that have been very successful, not mentioned in names, but there are people whose hearts are in the right place. But I think there are also people here that would, I always liken it to ticks. Maybe they look good when they're full of blood and they're shiny and all, but at the end of the day, they're still a tick. And I feel like a lot of people make a lot of money off of this country, and it doesn't come back. It's like the local economies, and that's why politics are local now. So I would suggest, to sort of cap it up, is that um, as more and more and more economies have been taken out, like you can no longer pay somebody a lot of money to have a small business in a local economy, and that money keeps circulating back in. It does happen, and oddly enough, Orange is a bit of a local economy. There's a local economic ecosystem there. I know a lot of people would like to see it better, and maybe that's part of some thinking with that artwork. If we paint, graffiti everywhere, then other people that like graffiti will move in. I don't know. I don't.
Right.
It's I can't read their minds, but I would argue that what happened with this whole event, with this with this uh, with this painting, is that you can sort of fight your battles locally. You do need to figure out who could make the decisions, and you do really need to stay involved. But you also need to really engage your social media, even
Right.
if you've got 3 friends on Facebook. I don't like that Facebook shares my information, but I give them so much information, they probably get information overload. I mean, I've got an Android, I've got 5 computers. Dude, I'm so out there. I'm not hiding
Are you
anything.
just on Facebook, or are you on anything else? Are you on Instagram or
I've got a Twitter account.
Twitter?
I've got the Motley Patriots, got a Twitter, but Twitter ecosystem is really weird. I got an 80,000 view on my Twitter on a video that I did, and I go back there, and it's like I just opened up my Twitter account yesterday, and I'm a pariah. It's really weird. The Twitter ecosystem, I'll have to figure it out. Maybe some of this Motley Patriot stuff will go back, but I don't find Twitter is right for me right now. But I
Do you
go
think? Do
back
you
to
think
what I
that'll
used to.
change when Elon Musk buys him? And what is your thoughts on his whole acquisition of Twitter? You think it's a good thing, bad thing,
Well,
or
when Elon
indifferent?
said he was never going to vote for a Democrat again, I think he put a target on his,
He did, yeah.
and he can't get chips either right now. So sometimes you got to wonder about who's making these decisions to pick winners.
So do you think?
Um,
But do you think it's going to be a good thing for Twitter by him coming in there? I mean, they already started cleaning out a whole bunch of bogus bot accounts and other.
okay, so I'll tell you what I think about it. I think you'll like it. So do you know why I think Elon Musk bought Twitter? I said this. I posted this on my page. So he's got Starlink, right? And he's an internet provider, right? And he's coming up with a phone that could probably work off of his Starlink. You've got satellite phones, but he's in
Right.
low Earth orbit, so it's quite possible you could have a phone that works. So what happens with Twitter if Elon Musk has I liken this to when Alexander Bell took um, when the phone was invented. I
Right.
think what's going to happen with Elon and his Starlink and his phone and his Twitter is that Twitter is going to become, because Twitter is ubiquitous. I think that's going to become his engine for shutting down telephone carriers off. You
Really?
think about it a bit, yeah. That's what that's about. I think because Twitter's Elon's a visionary, and but he's a first principles guy. He talks about that, and it's sort of like, okay, so the phone carriers, I pay too much money to have 2 phones. It's ridiculous. But it's what I do, so I can have an Android and an Apple wherever I go with multiple carriers, so I can always have some connectivity. We all know about redundancy. I don't have to go into that, and form factor and platforms and all that stuff. So there's that. But I think that he's got a target on his back. I also think when that starts happening, I have no evidence of that. It's just my brain telling me what it sees. So I make no representation to its accuracy. It's just a hunch. But that's what I would do. I tell people a lot of times, I don't know if it's true, but I know if I was in that position, that's how I would do it. If I was going to start a phone, why not grab a platform that everybody's used to looking at in the morning when they get up? Twitter would be that.
Something. Hey, people, if you're hearing this, if it all comes true, you can say you heard it.
Well, I told him Trump was going to get elected long before anybody else did.
That's what I mean. So it could be Sound Pig or Motley Patriot, however you want to refer to him at. Yeah. Paul, you heard it from here, right? Hey, Paul, I want to thank you so much. I do want to wrap up. We've been going over an hour. You've been awesome in giving me your time.
I'm a long form guy. You know that, right?
Yeah. This has been a great interview, and there are so many things I want to talk about, from the trial to some of the other events you've had going on, the conversations you've had with people, and things like that. You are a smart dude. You're well read and got some solid opinion, and you can pick them because you did that. But no, definitely going to want to have you back on for sure. You're a great guest. Glad that we were able to get, because I think you're going to be a fan favorite here. So,
nice. I hope so. Well, tell them about the Motley Patriot. Please subscribe. I get a lot of people that watch them. I get hundreds and hundreds of views. I went from nothing to I'm number 8,000 on Social Blade. So not bad for a YouTube channel to go from 0 to number 8,000.
Yeah. So your YouTube channel is the Motley Patriot. The profile picture on there of you is in the White House. And
that's correct.
And the banner
with
picture,
no beard.
No beard. Yeah, you look totally different, man. You could totally change your look. And then the picture, your header picture is, next to that lady with a very angry face, is the very famous T-shirt. Animal.
Oh yeah, the animal shirt, and that I donated that to a lawyer, the DUI guy. He was going to sell it at auction for charity for Children's Hospital, along with my bracelet. I had the bracelet that I was in court. I don't know how that all played out. I don't raise money. I don't put my name on that stuff because target. For that, I give it to somebody else smarter than me to manage that. But I am very much interested in adopting other people's. I will mention one other thing, which was the honor series that's on my Facebook. I've done a bunch of work for bringing free entertainment to veterans, and I'd like to get together with you moving forward, see what we can do. I've had some people that says, well, can we do some work for veterans in this community? I just bumped into a guy who's a level 6 therapist at VA. I don't know what that means, but part of the NEA grant that was used to try to paint graffiti all over Orange, there are other organizations that are bringing that grant money to veterans to paint and that side of therapy. So I'd like to springboard this whole process to reach out to those in need, veterans especially. And I don't want to take the realm on that. I just want to help in any way.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely be teaming up on that, because that's a lot of what Toby and I do, and Rob, my producer, pushing those causes. So especially Toby being an executive director of a number of nonprofits for me. Well, great. Hey, Paul, thank you so much. Hang on here for a second, but I want to thank you. Also want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Red Rum Sport Fishing down in Cabo. That's Toby's business. So one big sponsor of ours. Cool. Commodity Outdoor Development Group, boohammer.com, Gear for Grunts, which I'm wearing one of their shirts. And all of our sponsors, appreciate that. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, tuning in tonight, and giving some of your time. And again, Paul, thank you. We look forward to having you back on. With that, thank you, everyone, and have a good night. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Stu and the Nunn Show, and we hope you had as much fun listening to it as we did hosting it for you. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. You can find all these links at stewandthenunn.com. We will talk to you again next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Commodity Outdoors, Veteran Outdoors, Enlisted 9 Fight Company, Warrior Media Solutions, and boohammer.com. Thank you again, and have a good night.